Sheffield is red. Vale's unbeaten run, dead. Stockport, redemption. Boro a grand. Carlisle commit theft. No changes in the autos. Video game themed intro this week. And how about Football Manager?
Yes.
From 2017 to 2024, Mark Robins has been Coventry's, but no more. All that and more on today's Not the Top 20 podcast, an EFL weekend recap, and so much more as well. We're starting with Middlesbrough 5, Luton 1. George, there was a set of midweek fixtures last week, which means since we sat here last Monday, 2 teams in the Championship have won both league games. Boro, one of them, 4-1 win, followed by a 5-1 win. And how?
Yeah, it's the kind of game where it felt to me like this is always coming for Boro. Like Boro were going to wipe the floor with someone relatively soon, given how they've just looked like a pretty irresistible attacking force for the most part in the last few weeks. It looked briefly like that might be the case against Norwich, but Borja Sainz happened and prevented that from being the case. And I feel a bit sorry for Luton here because even though they lost the game 5-1, and that is inexcusable to do so, this was just one of those days where for Boro, they went forward with purpose, as they often do, but they were very, very clinical, and they didn't actually create loads. It wasn't like an onslaught of like 30 shots and 10 on target. It was just a case where on the day, Finazaz finally stuck one top bins from range. You had Bergzorg, who'd yet to score in a Boro shirt, finally put 2 away. Latalath with an unbelievable turn and finish. Again, a player that maybe hasn't been as prolific as some people expected him to be. And Luton were just on the receiving end of a team that have been very good anyway, but finally clicked. Now, that isn't to excuse or to take anything, for those Luton fans who are frustrated about as to what happened. And, this is a culmination of a start to the season for a relegated team that must be as bad as one that we've seen in recent history. But for half an hour, there was little between these two sides and very little goalmouth action at all. And bigger picture stuff, because we are going to talk about Rob Edwards and his future in a kind of a similar way to what happened with Mark Robins last week, which we'll also get onto. I think making any snap decisions based on this game alone would be wrong from a Luton perspective, albeit, if you take the season as a whole, then it's hard to get away from the fact that it's not good enough.
Some sparkling individual displays in the front four, particularly for Boro. Ben Doak has been lighting up the league in the last couple of weeks and looks quite the prospect, I think it's fair to say, on his first loan from Liverpool. The goals that you mentioned, beauties from Latalath with a little first touch with his chest, second foot, a turn on his right foot on the bounce, and then caressed left foot finish into the corner. Him and Tommy Conway having a nice little battle for the number 9 shirt, which is exactly what you want if you're Michael Carrick. Finazaz, as you say, the finishing chickens came home to roost in quite a big way this week for Boro. The quality of their 9 goals sort of underlines what we thought we knew, but we hadn't necessarily been able to back up in the goals scored column. And that is that Boro, at their best, are possibly the best, and certainly, if not, one of the best attacking teams in the Championship. Back to them in a second. As excellent as it was for them, equally painful for Luton. You've alluded to the fact that bigger picture, you don't think this would be the exact fixture to say, that's it, see you later, Rob Edwards, as many are discussing. What I would say is that Rob Edwards himself seems to take this defeat incredibly poorly and found it very difficult to talk to the press post-game, visibly emotional, and said, among other things, the important thing right now is the club. I've had 2 amazing years here. The last thing I want is to be a divisive figure. I mean, it's almost 48 hours later and no club statement has come forward. It may be that Rob Edwards is not going to be leaving Luton manager. At the same time, we are heading into an international break, and in those scenarios, teams do sometimes take a few days to make decisions like that. I was surprised at his team selection here. Really surprised he went with Cauley Woodrow over Jacob Brown, just in terms of the quality of those 2 players and the profile of those 2 players. And I perceived Luton's best chance in attack to be trying to disrupt Boro's back line with direct play into Adebayo, Morris, Brown, Not into Cauley Woodrow necessarily. I don't think he has really performed very well in a Luton shirt for as long as I can remember. In midfield, Walsh and Baptiste. I was surprised that there wasn't maybe a bit more bite in the form of maybe a marvellous Nakamba, given that, when you play against Boro at the Riverside, making sure that Morris and Hackney don't dictate the play is really crucial. I thought the performance at 0-0, as you alluded to, wasn't horrendous. The fact they conceded twice before the break, unfortunate, slow sloppiness from a defensive set piece, and then a fantastic goal from Latalath. For me, what was more concerning was conceding 2 more in the first 10 minutes of the second half after Edwards had made a change at half-time and tried to kind of get them to regroup. It kind of went the other way. Back to Boro and hitting the FOTMob corner button and taking a quick look at Boro's numbers as we are 15 games in with the international break now. They're in 7th position on 24 points. And after the first international break, they were 8th. After the second international break, they were 9th. They're now 7th. The top 6 has been out of reach so far this season for Boro, but even so, they are 4th favourites for the title with the bookmakers behind Leeds, Sheff United and Sunderland. So why is that for a team that hasn't been in the top 6 so far this season, informed, as it so often is, by underlying numbers? Let's use FOTMob to dig deeper, as FOTMob has XG numbers and so much more for the Championship, for League 1 and League 2. You can download the app using the link in the show notes. I'd like to start defensively. The focus is so often on their often scintillating attacking play, but defensively, their expected goals against number is very strong. It's the 4th best in the division. That would suggest that based on the shots that they have faced so far in 15 games, they've been of the 4th lowest quality cumulatively. The only teams better than that, Burnley, Sheffield United and Leeds. But you look at the goals that have been conceded by these teams. Boro, 17 goals conceded. Burnley, 6. Sheffield United 7, Leeds 9. So clearly falling down in the goals against column against those strong defensive sides. One reason for that is shot stopping. Seny Dieng's numbers are very poor this season. FOTMob has save percentage for Championship goalkeepers. James Beadle is the worst in the league in terms of save percentage this season, having saved 51.9% of shots on target. Seny Dieng at 57.5%, the second lowest save percentage of Championship goalkeepers, saving only a little better than 1 in 2. And that undermines a good defensive numbers because you're still conceding almost 1 in 2 shots on target. But it's not just about shot stopping. They also haven't had a consistent back 4 this season. None of the centre-backs have started even 3/4 of the game so far. So they're still getting settled in terms of defensive personnel, getting settled at fullback with Ayling and Neto Borges. But Borges only signed in late August. So still kind of putting things together in terms of personnel in the back line. And they're also just not particularly aggressive at the top of the pitch, as so many strong out-of-possession teams are. If you compare them to Leeds and Burnley, for example, they fall down a lot in terms of possession won in the final third, where Leeds lead the league and Bristol City are second and Boro in 15th. Partly that will be down to them having a pretty high possession share, but even so, as Leeds show, you can have a high possession share and also be winning the ball back a lot in the final third. They're also bottom for fouls, which is a small thing, but I think it adds credence to this idea that although Boro are a lovely team to watch, are they maybe a little passive? Are they a little soft-centred? Whereas the opposition go into games against Leeds and Burnley and Sheffield United thinking, how on earth are we even going to create chances against this team? How are we going to hurt this opposition? I feel like going into a game against Boro, you'd have a lot more confidence as an opposition team just because of their general sort of makeup and identity. But perhaps more than any other team in the league, you're going to be very, very concerned about their attacking strength. We've talked about it, 9 goals in a week. Their expected goals number is the top in the Championship. And per FOTMob, by some way as well, 28.0 expected goals for Boro this season. 25.1 is next best Leeds. And then Watford back on 22.6 in third. They're also third for big chances. Interestingly, in the champ at the moment, that stat lines up with accurate passes per match. You've got Leeds at the top for big chances and accurate passes. Norwich in second and then Boro in third. They are top for touches in the opposition box, again by quite a significant margin over Leeds and then Sheffield United, spending a huge amount of time camped in the opposition final third. And we're starting to see, with a bit more confidence in that front line, things starting to click and goals starting to flow. I think there's still so many points to play for. I do believe in the strength of this team overall, and it's reflected in the numbers. But even leaving them aside, you don't have to focus on numbers to think Boro are a fantastic football team. You can see it every time they play. And the fact that in games where they drop points, you'd still say that they were probably the better side in many different measures. So I think they'll be well within the top 6 by Christmas. I also don't think it's a given that they'll be challenging for automatic promotion. Unless that shot-stopping situation improves, unless this slightly softish centre of the team keeps tripping them up, it might make it difficult to close the gap on the top teams at the moment, where in the top 5 currently, every team is keeping a clean sheet between half and 2/3 of their games. At the moment, Boro aren't anywhere near that, so they need to improve defensively. If so, they will fly. The one thing, George, without a doubt, is there are multiple attacking players seemingly heating up at the same time, from Latalath and Conway to Doak, McGree, Bergzorg, and of course, Finn Azaz. A lovely player, a lovely segment, an excellent app. FOTMob, download it using the link in the show notes. The only other team to win both games since we last spoke on a Monday pod were Sheff United, and they won the Steel City derby on Sunday. This was the first Steel City derby in just over 5 years. The previous 3 had all been 0-0, and this one had 1 shot on target in the entire game, but it was from Tyrese Campbell, and he is a very good finisher, an instinctive finisher. He slid past, almost said Jeremy Beadle, he slid past young James Beadle for 1-0 to the Blades, and that's how it finished without much of a Sheffield Wednesday onslaught. Sheff United keeping another clean sheet. They've won 6 of 7 home games to 0. They've won 9 of their 15 games this season to 0, and in Chris Wilder giving it big fist pumps at the final whistle. You've got a Blades fan that's been in the stands, he's been in the dugout, and he was in the pub late into Sunday night and Monday morning as well. Wilder deserves so much credit for Sheff United's start to the season. They've picked up the most points in the Championship this season, only level with Sunderland because of their 2-point deduction. But I want to shout out Alan Nill, his long-term assistant manager, and understood by many to be a massive part of the tactical decisions that Chris Wilder makes, because at half-time, they brought on Femi Siriki, the right-back, for Alfie Gilchrist, who's been playing right-back for Blades in the main this season. And Siriki had a big impact in terms of increasing the pressure that Sheff United were able to put on Wednesday in the attacking third. He's much more attack-minded than Alfie Gilchrist, who does most of his work in the defensive third and is an excellent and very zealous defender. Siriki keener to bomb on. You can see that in the heat maps between the two players in this game. And it helped them pin Sheffield Wednesday back, keep the pressure on, and of course the goal coming following a set piece that came as a result of some of that pressure. And Substack Sam, who's a Blades fan who was at the game, said that Alan Nill spent the last 10-15 minutes of the first half standing with the young Femi Siriki with his arm around him, just talking him through the game and clearly getting him ready for what he wanted him to do in the second half. And I think it had an impact. So many other players to touch on. All season, really, there's been a number of players that have played well for Sheff United that did so again here. Gus Harmer might be playing off the left of the attack, which for many is not the right place to play him, but he's still able to impact the game with such clever flicks and tricks and forward passes, and so dynamic in his play as well. He was crucial in the build-up to the goal, where he played a pass into Callum O'Hare, having taken 2 defenders out of the game, O'Hare slipping in Tyrese Campbell. But I've been thinking a lot about Vinny D'Souza over the weekend, because he's been fantastic in pretty much every game this season. And I don't think there's many midfielders in the Championship quite like him, in terms of his most visible attribute being ball winning and the level at which he wins the ball with tackles, with interceptions, with a bit of strength to ease someone off it. He's been absolutely sensational. And, you know, he's not the most creative passer, and he doesn't need to be because Sheff United have them in other areas of the pitch. He's been incredible for Blaze this season. And mainly all weekend, I've been trying to work out how Sheff United could write a chant to Livin' Da Vida Loca with Vinny D'Souza Costa, which is his full name.
I thought that was going to scan better.
Vinny D'Souza Costa. It literally, scanning-wise, it could not scan
I thought
better.
it would rhyme, like, you know...
Oh, we haven't written the lyrics yet. I'll make it rhyme.
Just those, yeah, fine, okay. Next week.
Sheff United are the only EFL team that haven't yet trailed at half-time in a league game. They're in fantastic nick, and they got a big win over their city rivals on Sunday. We also had Norwich 0, Bristol City 2. George. Marconde's off the post for Norwich. He was playing up front in this game with Sargent out injured, but Bristol City made the most of some excellent moments of transition and won by 2-0.
Liam Manning continues to be a manager whose sides just flourish and thrive against teams that dominate the ball, because that was the case again here. Norwich, with most of the possession, as we keep saying, this seems to be a very good time to be playing Norwich right now because of their massive injury issues. Although I'm not entirely sure we can blame George Long for either goal here, because there were two quality finishes. But both of them came from transition moments, and both of them were created by former Derby players, Derby Academy grads, who have a very different set of skills, but both are perfectly suited to the way that Liam Manning teams attack. Because the first was created by Max Bird, who, as we know, his long-range left-footed passing ability is fantastic. He was able to set Roberts down the left-hand side, who passed it inside to Mametti, who found the far corner from outside the box with a really nicely taken finish. And then the second was Jason Knight, who we know is someone who is a bundle of energy, who's willing to get on the ball and be very direct. And it was him who carried the ball forward and passed it to Naki Wells with a really, really good finish at the near post, kind of Jermaine Defoe, head down, smack into the roof of the net finish. So two really well taken goals. I mean, as is always the case when Bristol City win games like this, I always think like they have to be clinical to make it work, but they always seem to be. Like it's not high volume of opportunities. It was similar when they went to Boro and beat them, but it seems to be a repeatable trick for Manning and his side. Shout out again for Marcus McGuane, who continues to perform brilliantly. I think Bristol City fans are wondering how this is a guy that couldn't really get into a League One team for the most part last season. The truth is, when he played under Manning, he was, in my mind, the best player in League One. They are perfectly suited to each other. McGuane obviously likes working under Manning. The style of play suits. And he's thriving there, which I don't think is a huge surprise. So between two teams who are have aspirations to finish in the top 6 this season, this feels like a big win for Bristol City, especially off the back of a pretty frustrating midweek defeat to Sheffield United, where they were 1-0 up late on in the game and lost it 2-1.
Yeah, and if this seems to be quite a repeatable trick, Josh, who's a Bristol City fan, saying on NTT20 Squad, not sure I've ever seen us turn over teams on their own patch so efficiently as the last month or two. 8 out of 10 performances across the board since the last international break, with countless injuries and some square pegs in round holes, and playing some of the nicest football I've seen since the Streaky Man as well. If that feels like a very repeatable trick, and it does, I guess the next trick has to be putting away teams that they're expected to beat, who don't give them the ability to break on them quickly, particularly at home, where they've only won 2 of their 7 games so far this season. Bristol City are one of a number of teams wondering whether they could break into the top 6. In order to do that, they will have to be better in home games. They've played 4 bottom half teams at home so far this season, 3 draws and the 1 win against Oxford United. So clear areas to prove themselves, I guess, as a potential playoff challenger in the Championship. For Norwich, winless in 6, still so many absences. Marconde's up top. He ain't Josh Sargent. Sorensen in midfield. He ain't Kenny McLean. George Long in goal. He ain't Angus Gunn. And the weird season so far, isn't it? If you split it into the 3 segments ended by each international break, you got 5 points from 4 games to start the season, then 10 points from 5, where they were maybe the best team in the league for a few games, and then 3 points from their last 6. So need some players back over the break. Portsmouth beat Preston 3-1 to get their first home win of the season at Fratton Park. I really strongly believe that they've deserved this, a win, because the football that they've been playing has been better than results over the last few games. They were the better side in the first hour against Argyle, but losing 1-0 near the end. They were the better side in the second half at Hull City last weekend. So I think they've deserved a win for their performance recently, and they've got it as well. Josh Murphy put them ahead with an absolute arrow from range. Such power in the shot to find the corner. Then it was a set-piece goal finished off by Ogilvie. Emil Rees had Preston back in it in the second half. Beautiful Frokje Jensen assist with the outside of his right foot. Not even the best Trivella assist of the EFL weekend we're going to hear about later. But later on, Callum Lang again with such industry and speed, winning a penalty, getting in front of the defender, winning a pen, and handing the ball to Colby Bishop. Now, most Portsmouth fans that I've seen didn't even know Colby Bishop was registered to play. I've seen it reported and discussed that the EFL gave special dispensation for Bishop to be registered and therefore able to play. The reason they didn't think he was registered is that Bishop had open heart surgery in August, which for someone who had fought so hard in his career from non-league into League 2, into League 1, and to get to the Championship, being a star man for that Pompey team that won promotion last season, to essentially have his dream of Championship football put on hold with such a scary procedure. Also, the extra context being that he had the open heart surgery 12 days after his baby was born with him and his partner. Months of recovery it's been, and I just can't even begin to imagine how difficult that's been for him and his family. For him to be able to play, for him to have come on here, to have been given the penalty, obviously scored it, it's just an incredible story, the most heartwarming moment of the EFL weekend and possibly of the whole season so far. And I'm torn, George, because I want to go big on this. I want him to be able to play regularly and contribute, because Portsmouth need him to as well. They really need him and what he brings at the top of the pitch. I also really don't want to ramp up the pressure and expectation on what he should be able to do at Championship level, having been through such a huge procedure. So an amazing moment, that the video that Portsmouth have put out of the atmosphere when he comes on, when he gets handed the ball for the pen, when he scores the pen, just spine-tingling stuff. And
it's something that Pompey need. You know, it's something that as a club, I think they've endured a really difficult start to life back in the Championship, and you know, getting this first home win of the season was so important, and having the guy who was, you know, one of the main men for their Championship winning, or League One winning, I should say, season off the back end of last campaign, having not known if they're going to see him again, is going to have a significant impact on the whole feeling at the club. And in terms of not putting the pressure on him, I agree, but also, you know, there won't be any tokenism going on. Like the reason why John Messina would have brought him on in this game is to get him back to fitness so he can play a massive part in their season. So I think even taking the emotion out of it, this is a key player for Pompey whose injury or illness, whatever you want to call it, came at a time that was unexpected and impacted their recruitment, and his early return from that absence can only be a really positive thing. So fingers crossed we see him get back to full fitness very soon and keep banging in the goals for Portsmouth.
Yeah, and shout out Marlon Pack, who played centre-back here for Pompey. Terry Devlin getting a lot of love as well for his performances at right-back, which is a new position for him as well. Mousinho and Portsmouth having to problem solve as they go, because they need to pick up points and get themselves away from the bottom of the league. How about Cardiff 1, Blackburn 3, George? Some very sexy football played by those in blue and white.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really big result for Blackburn. 7 hours without a goal before getting on the score sheet through Andy Weimann. And it was just a lot of really nice, again, transitional play that it wasn't a kind of consistent goal threat, but when they created chances, they were often tap-ins, basically. Todd Cantwell at the forefront of it. I think Lewis Travis has stepped up in terms of his on-ball activity so far this season. In the past, he's been a bit of a wrecking ball for Blackburn, but at the moment, he's looking really creative. Maybe
6 months under Kieran.
Exactly. Also, just getting a promotion to the Premier League, you're going to come back feeling pretty good about it. Weimann's obviously been a good addition. Ahashi through the middle, whilst he didn't get on the score sheet this time, was still very lively. You know, Cardiff created a few opportunities as you'd expect them to. They scored from a rebound from the penalty through Turnbull, but you know, Blackburn were the better team on the day here. And after a really good start to the season, John Eustace was probably thinking, no, not again, where things start tailing off and suddenly you get judged on what you've done previously. But no, it was an impressive 3-1 display against a Cardiff side who've really enjoyed playing at home in the last few weeks under Omar Ita. They have their own kind of good feeling going on. So a big result for them. Kind of gets their challenge towards the top end of the Championship back on track. For Cardiff, you know, they obviously haven't announced the Ritza appointment yet. You know, it seems like they're still kind of biding their time to make sure it's what they want to do.
Back-to-back defeats. Ooh.
Yeah, maybe.
Testing your resolve, Mehmet Dalman.
We'll see.
We will see. Andy Weimann scoring his 100th goal in all competitions in English football. I enjoyed shouting out Naki Wells last week, because I'm guilty of getting overexcited about shiny new things and young players and things of that nature. But I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older myself, but starting to really appreciate people like Andy Vyman and Naki Wells a bit more maybe than I used to. His first ever goal in the league came for Watford in 2010-11 when he was 18 and playing for Watford that day. Scott Loach, Lloyd Doyley, Lee Hodson, Adrian Mariappa, Martin Taylor, John Eustace, Stephen McGinn, Andros Townsend, Will Buckley, Andy Vyman, Danny Graham. Classic Watford side. Fantastic finisher, versatile attacking player, and someone with 100 career goals in English football is an incredible feat. His goal was, per Opta analyst, the longest passing move leading to a championship goal so far this season. A sequence of 35 passes. Absolutely brilliant football for 2 of those goals for Blackburn. West Brom got an away win as well. A first win after 8 without. This one at Hull City on Sunday. I love that you can have an 8-game winless run in a season that's only 15 games old and still be in the top 6. Yeah. And that's because even during that run, very few teams were able to beat West Brom because they have that lovely high floor. And beating Hull here, this very low on confidence, low on good vibes Hull City side, going ahead thanks to a double deflected Carlin Grant shot cutting in off the left. Simons hit the bar for Hull straight after that, and immediately Josh Madger had put West Brom 2-0 up. This was early on in the game. It couldn't have started much worse for Hull. They did pull one back. Really nice header from Joao Pedro. Not that one, but they couldn't get another goal. So West Brom with a 2-1 win. That was Carlos Corberan's 100th game in charge of West Brom. 45 wins in that time, 25 draws, and the 30 defeats. Hull winless in 7. Only 3 points in that time, and at home this season, only 7 points from 8 home games. So it might be slightly more entertaining football than they were playing last season under Liam Rossini. At this moment, that's really the only thing you can point to.
I'm not even sure they would say that is.
No, probably not. There are more home wins in the top 6, George, to touch on. In fact, in the top 6, only Sunderland failed to win. More on that in a second. But we had Leeds 2, QPR 0. Leeds to 0 at home at the moment. Feels like cheating a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, they don't really concede much in terms of opportunities from the opponents, and that was kind of the case here. QPR basically kept at arm's length. Sam Field had an opportunity after 65 minutes that he kind of hooked over the bar, but apart from that, they didn't really get near them. Leeds going ahead through Jayden Bogle after a bit of a goalmouth scramble. They missed loads of chances to increase their lead. They controlled the game in QPR's half. Of their 643 passes, 308 were in the opposition half compared to QPR, who managed just 64 passes in Leeds' half throughout the whole game. Just 7 touches in Leeds' box. Like, it's just the level of dominance we're seeing from Leeds at Ellen Road is remarkable right now, and it kind of feels impossible to predict anything other than them marching their way up to the Premier League right now, partly because of the environment that they're in, but also just because they are so good at home and even away from home, where they may not pick up points as liberally, but the 1-0 defeat over Millwall in midweek was still an all right display where they just conceded 1 goal to Tanganga, but apart from that, they were still the better team within the game. So I'm still very confident in Leeds and their ability to press on, and QPR were just the most recent team to go to Ellen Road and come away thinking, they're pretty good, aren't they? And Luton travel there after the international break midweek, which for Rob Edwards is a pretty tough scene. Home to Hull's the game before for them.
In the interest of, a bit like with Vinny de Souza earlier, making sure I mention players who should have been given more praise so far on the pod this season that I have not given enough praise to. Pascal Struijk, Leeds' left-sided centre-back, has been absolutely imperious this season. He has kicked on so much as a defender and looks purely dominant on that front, but also as a ball player and as a goal threat from set pieces. An absolutely brilliant season so far. Burnley beat Swansea 1-0, injury time penalty from Jay Rodriguez, and this one was a big goal for Scott Parker, isn't it? This one, if they hadn't scored it, would have meant 4 games without Burnley scoring a goal. And there was a lot of fortune, I would suggest, in the fact that they were given the goal. Grimes had a hand up. I don't really know where I stand with this penalty award. I think it's unfortunate for Swansea. put it that way. I'd be unhappy if I was a Swansea fan. Tough to take for them.
Swansea fans won't care. For Burnley, it feels like a bit of justice after Jadon Anthony's goal was ruled out in midweek.
Absolutely. It certainly does, and that is worth pointing out. If I'm going to read out the stat that it would have been 4 games without a goal, well, they scored a perfectly good one on Thursday night against West Brom. I do think this is a better attacking display overall from Burnley, one of their best in the last few weeks. They had a lot of chances before injury time. Swansea did have a couple too, it should be said, but Vigouroux made some really good saves. They were also the better side against West Brom in that 0-0 Burnley, and that was a great result on paper at the Hawthorn. So, I'm more positive here than I was last Monday, shall we say. The defence is excellent, and that's just as important in many ways as a good attack. Should probably show some more love to Conrad Egan-Riley, 21 years old, established himself at the heart of this defence, played some lovely passes in this game. Maxime Esteve plays alongside him, is only 22. They've obviously got James Trafford in nets, who's only 22. All these guys performing really, really well, where some of the more exciting attacking players in Burnley's squad are struggling to have a consistent impact. Last but very much not least, George, those tricky Hornets of Watford beat your slightly less tricky, but still sometimes tricky Yellows in front of your eyes on Friday night.
Yeah, it was a great game to go to. It was my first ever trip to Vicarage Road, and I absolutely loved it, I must say. Had a nice couple of beers with you in a pub near Tottenham Court Road. A nice couple of beers with Dave Walker, our England pod friend, in Bushy. And then a nice couple of beers in Putt Shack in Watford with my dad and my brother.
Burger by the ground, anything like that?
I had some chicken bites at Putt Shack.
Delicious.
It was really, it's a great away end, and I think the Oxford fans did ourselves proud on the day. It's a bit of a weird game, really. I would say there was very little between the two sides in the first half. Oxford back in their new wing back shape, which I don't love, if I'm honest. I think it's kind of needs must with the injuries that Oxford currently have. But it did mean that they dealt with the threat of Ebosele and Barr. Ebosele playing as left wing back, which didn't really work because he is unbelievably right-footed. So he would often scamper down the left-hand side, get past Kioso, and then be like, "Oh no, but I've got to run the other way now because I can't use my left foot." There was one kind of half chance in the first half where Kioso kind of got in behind and tried to square it to Scarlett, but his ball was ahead of Scarlett. But there wasn't really much in terms of goalmouth action. That changed in the second half because from the moment the second half whistle blew until about the half an hour mark, Watford were by far the better team. Sheff Utd showed that when he's on it and at it, he's just way too good for this level. Frankly, I know that some Watford fans question his final product, his end product, but that is a proper first world problem because his ability to get on the ball and basically skip through midfield and carry the ball into dangerous areas consistently is just something you don't see that often when you're watching a live game.
Mm-hmm.
He might shoot too often. He shot from 3 corners on Friday night, forced a save from one, a clearance off the line with another, and the other one just went over the bar. All 3 of them genuine shots because I think he knows that Jamie Cumming isn't very tall, so he was like, I'm just going to keep swinging it above his head.
He had at least 1, maybe 2 quite strange shots from open play as well. He tried to lob Cumming when he was just not off his line.
Yes. So it was it was a remarkable individual performance, I would say. Ebosele had a one-on-one where he couldn't really get a shot off, but Oxford missed. Despite not really carrying a massive goal threat during the game, Oxford missed 2 sitters, basically. Hidete reversed, who scored the winner against Hull in midweek, seemingly just tried to do exactly the same thing for I don't really know why, just kind of coax it in with the outside of his right foot when he could have just hit it very hard and low across the keeper. And then Mark Harris, kind of a Sam Long header from a corner, I think from a long throw, was saved by Backman, and it fell to Harris, who tried to hook it with an overhead kick into the goal and only succeeded in hitting it over the bar, which he's just one of those players that when he's scoring goals, he seems to have no trouble doing so. And when he's in a lean spell, which is what he's in now, he finds weird and wonderful ways to manage to miss the goal. I think after a period of pretty poor performances from Oxford, this was better in terms of less sloppy in possession, really good kind of aptitude to the task, and they kind of took the game to Watford, but despite the 2 missed opportunities, I'm pretty sure Watford fans left feeling like they hadn't seen, there was a game that they deserved to win. They hadn't seen much against them. So I wasn't, overly impressed, I wouldn't say, by Watford. I still think if you take out certain individuals, I personally don't think that their top 6 berth is one that they will maintain. But there's no denying the real quality of some players within their side, and Cleverley certainly looks like he's getting the best out of those individuals. So, frustrating night for Oxford. Maybe one that if Watford fans, if they had conceded late on, would have felt it would have been a travesty. But they're up to 4th, so fair play to them.
3 draws in the Champs. Sunderland 2, Coventry 2. Sunderland 2-0 up and seemingly cruising after about 35-40 minutes. 2 beautiful goals. One from Wilson Isidore, making a habit of scoring really good volleys and really good first-time finishes. I think that's I think of his 5 goals off the top of my head. That's the 4th that's just been a really instinctive first-time finish. And then Dennis Serkin scored an even better goal, just carrying it forward on the break, and then just launching it in from range, foot-like attraction, engine, etc. And Sunderland's game management has been so good this season, seeing out wins with consummate ease until this. Haji Wright scored after 62 minutes. Bit of a kind of loose ball poked through by Sunderland midfielder, inadvertently smashed in by Wright. And then Jack Rodoni at the back post, heading in a brilliant Sakamoto cross, meant that Graham Carr, Coventry's interim manager, managed to mastermind Coventry City getting a point from 2-0 down at the Stadium of Light. Why is he in charge? Well, because Mark Robins was sacked. You've seen it. You've seen it already, and we did react during Under the Lights, which is our midweek fixture podcast for paid subscribers of NTT20.com. But we've not heard the take of George Ellick yet on Doug King and those who run Coventry City deciding it's time to part company with a manager who, since joining in 2017, had taken them on a journey that will lead to a statue. I've no doubt about that. They've decided that they will move forward without him. Try and give me your overview of this situation.
I mean, I definitely don't agree with the decision. I think to sack him off the back of a 2-1 defeat against Derby in midweek, after a performance that, if you take out the final result and you look at the kind of what happened in both boxes within the game, with Coventry creating the better chances, Derby being clinical with their chances, Coventry being fairly wasteful, it is in line with the 2 previous wins away at Middlesbrough and at home to Luton, where the performances were improving. After a difficult start to the season, I would say all evidence we had to hand was that Coventry were kind of getting back at it and were improving, and we were seeing the kind of performances that we anticipated that we would see from them this season. So, in my mind, the decision to sack him off the back of that one game, especially with an international break coming up and a trip to Sunderland coming up on Saturday, is a bit of a red flag. Like, that is, in my mind, almost using a result as a means to execute a decision rather than using the evidence in order to inform that decision. I think when you consider the absolute outpouring of grief from Coventry City fans about this news and about Robins being sacked, now, clearly the fan base at Coventry will have an affinity towards Robins that will mean that he's always welcome there. And their experience of him being their manager, taking them from League 2, taking them up to the brink of the Premier League and to an FA Cup semi-final through 2 promotions, will mean that there was going to be an inherent bias there. But we also all know that football fans are fickle, and it is perfectly possible for football fans to appreciate a manager but also turn on them off the back of some good results. And the fact that Coventry fans, pretty much to a man, felt betrayed at this having been done, for me is also a signifier that things hadn't gone too far. Like, this didn't necessarily have to be the end of a cycle. One thing we hadn't really spoken about much when we spoke about this on Footmob Corner the other week was about Adi Vivesh, who had been Mark Robins' right-hand man, his assistant manager throughout this tenure. He left in the summer. So, and The reasons for that we don't know. But to me, that should give Robins a bit more time and a bit more leeway, where like you've lost someone who has been a key part of your team for this whole tenure. Are you not therefore afforded the time to effectively work out how to fill that void, work out how to replace what was clearly a very valuable part of that team? Yeah, he hasn't seemed to have been given that. Now, Doug King and the ownership group at Coventry will be judged on not on the sacking itself, but on the appointment that they make. And until we know who that appointment is, it's very, very hard to comment, because, you know, we've sat here before and people have sat here before where you judge a sacking and then you see who comes in next, and actually it does turn out that maybe they did need that person to take them to the next level. The bookies' price at the moment suggests that Frank Lampard is likely. I'm probably a little bit kinder to Lampard in my mind than a lot of people would be. I think he gets chucked into a bracket of managers where their former world-class players have struggled a bit in management and now consigned to being terrible or useless. His Derby side, of course, had a ridiculous amount of talent when you look back at who was in that team. Mason Mount being a key one, Mark Gahey being another one. But his relationship with Chelsea, therefore, in itself was a big reason why Derby had that squad. And maybe Coventry will benefit from this, but Coventry will also be able to pick up players who will go on to be future England internationals going forward. And, you know, he did take Derby to a playoff final. The underlying numbers were never particularly good, which is obviously a red flag, but his aggressive, high-pressing playing style did seem to work better at championship level than it did in the Premier League. Now, he obviously didn't do particularly well at Chelsea or Everton. I think you can make excuses for both of those. The key thing for me is that if Coventry, say Mark Robins had decided in the summer to move, say he went to Leicester, and then Coventry's hired Frank Lampard, I'd be like, it's a massive risk, but like, you know, maybe they want to find out if there is a manager in there, and I can see them doing that. But to take what Mark Robins has done, and someone of that recent CV at this club with that affinity to the playing staff and the players and the fan base, and be like, no, sorry, you are out, and we're going to go and we're going to appoint Frank Lampard. Again, I don't see what evidence-based decision-making could lead to that process. I don't understand what that could be. Like, is it a case where, as an ownership group, you're like, well, if we appoint Frank Lampard, our worldwide appeal and our club stature will elevate to an extent that we can help commercialise the football club? But like, possibly, but it's a pretty unromantic way of, or not even unromantic. It's like a pretty just bottom line cash sheet way of looking at a football club. So we'll have to see. I mean, we'll have to see who it is. Robbie Keane's another one who's been linked, who I was reading up about this morning. He's quite an interesting case where clearly, as a player, has a big affinity to the Coventry fan base. He was Maccabi Tel Aviv manager, and during a pretty strange period, obviously, there seemed to do very well and managed them pretty well in the Europa League. Again, it's hard to see why you would swap Robins for him, apart from something of a kind of a wanting an A-lister in that seat, but at least in his short managerial tenure, there's some intrigue there. But you know, if you called Mark Robins something else, and you put his CV as an out-of-work manager in amongst Robbie Keane and Frank Lampard, there's no doubt who the overwhelmingly obvious, clear candidate would be to take on the role, and he's the person that you've just sacked.
Yeah, there's a fan forum Monday evening, not long after you'll be listening to this, if you listen quickly, where Doug King will explain himself, I guess, answer some questions, I guess, and maybe map out the next stages of Coventry City. You know, the crucial line in the statement was the position will be that of head coach, working within the new structure set up by club over the last 2 years. I, reading between the lines there, just think that for whatever reason, the club and those making the decisions at the very top have an image of Coventry City over the next decade that doesn't have a manager of Mark Robins in charge of it, which I think could be a really bad move. But again, as I said last midweek, it's still a great opportunity for someone to come in and take a really good squad, underperforming their underlying numbers, but performing perfectly well, and get them to fly up the table fairly quickly, get some positivity, get the fans on your side as the manager and the players as well. This isn't necessarily the case where I think someone's going to come in and Coventry are suddenly under threat of relegation. I think it's a great opportunity for a new manager. It leaves Michael Carrick and Carlos Corberán as the longest-serving managers in the Championship. Carrick was hired one day before Carlos Corberán, which is quite funny.
Two great appointments.
Great appointments. Stoke 1, Millwall 1. We had Josh Coburn putting Millwall ahead from an Aziz assist, not Azaz. He's on my mind after your excellent Footmob Corner segment. A penalty that was not given to Stoke that looked absolutely stonewall for a pullback in the area. But Gibson equalising with the exact same front post header from a corner as he scored last week against Derby as well. Also 1-1 at Derby with them and Argyle sharing the points. 2 smashing goals here. Well, Jerry Yates's brilliant overhead kick was a real wow moment for Derby, a player that's really struggled to score Championship goals this season, but now has 2 in 2. And then a Randall free kick from range, which flicked off a head in the wall and nestled into the far corner. Argyle's second goal of the season away from home, their second point of the season away from home. Both of those goals coming from range. Whittaker at QPR and Randall here. Jerry Yates from the halfway line was the closest that Derby came to a winner with an unbelievable effort that was tipped wide. And that's the end of the Championship segment. Yeah, tons of good stuff in League One over the weekend. 2 5-goal wins. A 6-1 and a 5-0. I'll tell you about the 6-1. It came between Peterborough and Cambridge. And very much going to form between these two over the last few years. Posh thrashing their rivals, Cambridge. At home, it was 5-0 last season. It was 6-1 this time out. And it's just so fun when they play like this. They're the only team in the top 4 tiers of English football to have more than 50 goals scored in their games this season. 31 goals scored, 27 against, so 58 in total in their 15 league games. And the front 4 are just electric, aren't they, when they're combining like this? Ricky J. Jones with a goal and an assist. Joel Randall with an assist in the number 10 role. Malik Mothersill playing off the left with a nice goal. And Kwame Poku off the right with a hat-trick and 1 assist as well. And possibly the highest performing player in the whole EFL this season relative to the level that they're playing at, I would suggest. 15 goal contributions, made up of 10 goals and 5 assists. He's joint top scorer in the league with Louis Barry. It's the quality of those goal contributions as well that is just, every now and again you just get a player that is so visibly above the level that they're playing at. And Barry is a good example of that in League One, but Poku in particular as well. And it's not just the goals that he scores, but the way that he finds space in tight areas, the fact that he's so hard to stop coming inside onto his left foot that teams really want to stop that option for him. But he's also improved so much with his delivery with his right foot. And that's, a lot of his assists this season when he's going down the outside, and most of his goals and when he's coming on the inside. He has just kicked on again and again and is still only 23 years old. I just think when you see this Peterborough front 4, when you see that on the bench they've got the guys that they signed in the summer, the likes of Ibiodo, Chris Clark, Kean Hayes, you just think those guys will be these guys in a year or two when these guys have moved on. It's like the consistency of their recruitment is not new, and it hasn't been new for ages now, but it's still amazing and it's so effective, isn't it? Like, they make it look really simple to build exciting attacking teams, but they consistently buy lightning quick, skillful attackers, midfielders and defenders who can play accurate long passes and or through balls in order to make the most of having lightning quick, skillful attackers. It's just a lovely recipe, and they are not very good at defending, which means that at the moment they're only a mid-table team, and there are plenty of Mondays where I wouldn't sit here and wax lyrical, but I think a 6-1 win against your rivals, the goals that they scored, the football that they played, it was absolutely brilliant to watch. George, what about Stockport 5, Bolton 0? Stockport having lost 5-0 at home to Wycombe in midweek. I mean, how many times will a team have lost 5-0 and won 5-0 at home in the same week?
Who was it that said that if you wanted one manager to bounce back from a 5-0 defeat, it would be Dave Challoner?
Probably me.
I think it was you.
It might have been me.
Yeah, mad this. To come up against Wycombe midweek, lose 5-0, offer next to nothing in terms of threat against Wycombe. Basically roll over, have your tummy tickled at home. For the second time this season, because they lost to Leyton Orient. Yeah, it sounds lovely. And then to come up against the Bolton side, who, we know that Bolton have had their issues this season. We know that Bolton don't look to be as strong as the Bolton that we've seen for the last couple of seasons, but there have definitely been improvements in their recent performances. And to basically do the same to them, where the game kind of fell in a very similar way, with Stockport going ahead relatively early after 25 minutes, just after 25 minutes, but limiting Bolton to absolutely nothing themselves. They had 4 shots in the whole game, amounting to 0.17 XG. The goals themselves, Will Collar got the first in the first half after some good work from Louis Barry. Went into the break at half-time, 1-0 up. But then it was just basically every time Stockport County went forward, they scored. Whittam with the second, Horsfall with a header from a corner with the third, Louis Barry getting the fourth, and then Odin Bailey with a really nicely taken goal, getting the ball on the left-hand side, driving towards goal and dispatching it into the bottom right-hand corner from just outside the area. It's just a great way for Stockport to bounce back from that defeat. I think that after the defeat against Wycombe, a lot of people, and even in Under the Lights, our midweek podcast, Matt asked me, is now the time to kind of maybe accept that Stockport aren't going to be quite as good as we thought they were going to be? No, because they are able to seemingly put that out of vision. And when they play like this, and when they're as dominant as they are here, and this is the kind of performance we see from Stockport more often than the aberration, then it's very hard to get near them because they know how to create good goal scoring opportunities. They're relatively clinical and they're defensively solid. I should also say, for Bolton, concerned at the moment because there doesn't seem to be any discernible reason. You talk about Posh there and how they bounce back from losing key players over the course of the summer. With Posh, you can accept why there may be a drop off. With Bolton, it's not really the case. We should say they've only lost 2 of their last 7 or 8 games. But I think Bolton fans will feel like, having gone away to 2 decent sides in Birmingham and Stockport in the last 2 away games and been well beaten by both, they don't want to be a side that are able just to see off the poorer teams in the league when they come up against the better ones. They're second best.
Yeah, Hugh made some quite good points on the squad over the weekend. On the one hand, for Bolton, since that horrendous Huddersfield performance and defeat, the 4-0 defeat, their league record was 5 wins, 1 draw, and 1 defeat to that Birmingham side, who are very, very good. And therefore, to react to this by pulling the trigger would be to basically just ignore the last 6 weeks or so, which have been so impressive. But also, Bolton in big games. Hugh listing them, the recent ones. They lost 5-0 here. They beat Peterborough 1-0 the other day. Whether that was a really big game or not is kind of up for debate, given Posh are in mid-table. But 2 playoff clubs from last season. They lost 2-0 to Birmingham. They lost 4-0 to Huddersfield. They drew at home to Wrexham. They very famously lost to Oxford United in the playoff final, 2-0, with a really underwhelming performance. They had got past Barnsley just about in the semi-final when they were expected to get through a little more comfortably. So a real theme for Bolton that Ever has to sort out in whatever they would consider their next few big games, because if they can't perform, and whether that's a temperament thing or a tactical thing or a bit of both is up for discussion. If they can't perform in those big games, it's hard to imagine that they will be able to either accumulate enough points to go up automatically or get through a playoff scenario where they've lost in the last 2 seasons. So lots for them to think about. On a comedy level, someone did a typo on the team sheet, which was unfortunate here. Writing out the kit colours: Bolton, white shirt, blue shorts, shite socks. And that's the first time I've ever realised that the word white and the word shite are just 1 letter away. Yeah. And the letter W is directly above the letter S on the keyboard. Makes you think. It really makes you think. A bit of fun. Burton played Shrewsbury. 2 worst teams in League One went head-to-head with 2 caretaker managers in the dugout, just kind of summing up how these 2 teams have started the season. And Burton won 2-0, meaning that they are the last team in the EFL this season to win a league game. Congrats to Burton. Sean Parrish in the dugout for Shrews, Tom Hounsell for Burton, and they were the better side and winning deservedly so. In the first half, Kalinauskas hit the post. He's had a couple of more lively appearances off the left-hand side of their attack recently. In the very next phase of play after hitting the post, he finished well after a brilliant Elliot Watt cross, and Watt got another lovely assist For the second goal, sliding Danilo Orsi through to finish for Burton. Absolutely insane Orsi stats.
Mm-hmm.
Only 4 players have scored more than him in League One this season. Pretty impressive.
Wow.
For a team that's won
Yeah.
for the first time. Even more insane, he's played the equivalent of 12 90s worth of minutes. He's had 11 shots, 7 on target, 6 goals.
That is mad. Madness.
Freaks me out a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Don't like it.
Probably unsustainable, I think.
Might move on. Freaks me out a bit. This game's got me thinking about how important perspective is in life, but also in relegation battles. Because for Shrews, off the back of this, off the back of the last few weeks, and sacking Paul Hurst, and not having that much faith in the ownership, the director of football, to hire a good replacement, partly because the squad that the replacement's going to have to work with is so poor for the level. It feels like it's done for Shrews. Like, wow, let's write this off. Let's give League Two a crack next season. For Burton, after this win, you can view it as, oh, hold on, we're 6 points from safety, and there's still 96 points to play for. There's still so many games to play. There's still such a good chance to stay up. If you ignore the team name, if you ignore the squad strength, ignore the underlying performance data, there is objectively so much of a chance for both of these clubs to still stay up if they can get something going. But at the moment, it just feels like that for Burton because they've had, a week where they drew at Crawley and then beat Shrews, and they got a new manager coming in, and maybe he can get to kick on. Whereas Shrews, it doesn't feel like that at all. So I just find it really interesting to kind of frame it like that, because that's how I'm feeling at the moment. I'm like, wow, Shrews are done. But Burton, maybe. Well, they're on literally the same amount of points. Funny old game, isn't it? The favourites.
But then how would you, so say Shrewsbury announce now that like Gareth Ainsworth has been appointed manager?
Yeah.
What would then be your feeling?
I'd be like, they've got every chance of staying up.
Yeah. It's just funny. It's just perception.
It's just perception.
Yeah.
Perspective.
It's only November.
Energy.
They could get in there, go on some run, could get in the playoffs.
What if I said to you, what if Burton hired Jim McNulty?
I said I have to do some research, mate.
The current favourite for the job. No doubt we'll talk about those two next Monday. On the next pod, Wigan 0, Wycombe 1. I feel like any other week we'd lead League One with the league leaders who have won 6 in a row, but with 2 5-goal wins and a first win in the season for Burton. Wycombe have been bumped to 4th in the running order, George, but another win for a team that have got more points and scored more goals than any team in the top 4 tiers.
Joe Lowe.
You are the reason that I breathe.
Joe Lowe with a set-piece goal to put Wycombe up early in the game. And then, in fairness to Wigan, like this, I put Wycombe up on the betting show. Wigan's issues from a attacking standpoint have been, just pretty consistent over the course of the season. But they were okay. And in particular, it was Thelo Asgard, who was thwarted by Ravazzoli, the Wycombe keeper. 2 headers from Asgard from point-blank range. Both of them he did pretty well with. Ravazzoli making 2 important saves. And that is what kept Wycombe in it. Because unlike the game against Stockport midweek, after when they went ahead, they kind of continued to pile on the pressure. This time when they went ahead, it was the home side Wigan who were the dominant force for the most part within the game, weren't able to find a way past Ravazzoli. But Wycombe will need to find many different ways to win games. This was a relatively novel one for them. Normally we can count on them scoring at least 2 goals within games, but here it was just the one. But it was still enough to get them a victory going into the international break. And, with Birmingham dropping points, they're currently 2 points clear at the top of League One. For Wigan, still frustration. I think it's annoying from their perspective that even though this was probably a better attacking display, they still weren't able to actually get the ball in the back of the net, which is an issue. I'm still not entirely sure where Wigan kind of believe they should be, because if they're a team that have aspirations to be a top 6 side, and they're currently languishing in 19th on 14 points, and they struggle to create consistent goal scoring opportunities, something's going to have to change pretty soon, because especially with some of the teams beneath them looking a bit better. Crawley's change of manager seems to have done them no issues, albeit they didn't want to lose Scott Lindsay. Cambridge, obviously, despite what happened at Peterborough, picking up a few 3 back-to-back wins. Burton off the mark now. Shrewsbury possibly with Ainsworth coming in. Any teams up there, looking at Wigan in particular, Leyton, Orient, possibly even Blackpool, need to make sure they are kept to task, because it's not going to be long if they're languishing down there. They're going to get flown by.
Leyton, Orient and Blackpool?
Yeah.
Played against each other?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a good
3-0.
segue, wasn't it?
3-0 to Orient in East London. North East London? East London.
Where are we?
Leyton.
East London.
East London. Beat Blackpool 3-0 with a pretty simple formula. Get it down the left channel. Get Dan Adjie drifting left, latching onto it. Get Dan Adjie beating his defender and putting the ball across. Get the right-sided forward to attack the back stick. Score 3 goals from it. Perkins got the first one. Kelman got the second one. And then the right-back Tom James got in on the act. All of the goals broadly similar. And it doesn't reflect that well on Blackpool's defensive solidity or their shape out of possession. Clearly targeting the right side. Lawrence Gabriel, the right back. Afire, the right centre-back, and Apter, the right winger. And it worked really, really well. Good game plan for Orient. I think this game sums it up as just as much as the previous dozen. That the key for Orient to get above the current position of 20th, current points tally of just 1 point per game, such an underwhelming start to the season, is just, for me, as simple as the final third, the final 20 yards or so of the pitch. Like, defensively, out of possession, their general approach to like build up, they're just not even nearly a relegation side, in my opinion. It's just the consistency and the quality in the final third that's been really poor this season. And, there are individuals like Ollie O'Neill I was so excited for this season. Really struggled to have an impact in terms of goal contributions. Adjie, pretty hot and cold. Perkins has come into the side. It's had a good couple of weeks. Kelman started the season quite brightly, has kind of fizzled out a little bit. They just really need to improve in the final third, whether that's in terms of these players catching fire. Maybe this is the catalyst for that. Or, changes and additions in the January transfer window. But I'm convinced that Orient are so much better than their 20th place position. As for Blackpool, very concerning run of form. Just in terms of results, we're now looking at a team winless in 6 with 2 draws and 4 defeats. I watched that game against Wigan a couple of weeks ago. That was on the Monday night, and I was alarmed at how sloppy I thought they looked tactically, what a lack of structure I felt that they had. Playing a 4-4-2, trying to play very quickly and directly, either getting it into the front 2 or down the sides. They can look quite dangerous like that. I won't argue that. I wouldn't say it's the most sophisticated attacking approach, and I think that some teams aren't finding it that difficult to defend against them. And in the words of Fee, Blackpool fan on the squad, I've seen more defensive shape in a bowl of jelly. And that really does sum it up at the moment. It's pretty alarming. They obviously had a bit of a bounce after the change in manager with 4 wins in a row. They haven't won any other game this season outside of those 4 games that they won in a row. It's pretty peculiar. It can't really continue, as you've discussed just then. Like, they are not in a great position in the league, down in 18th spot, and things are going to start getting pretty ugly if performances and results don't turn. Tell me about Wrexham 1, Mansfield 0, 2 teams that won promotion from League 2 last year, going head-to-head towards the top of League 1.
Wow, that was so fast. Ryan Barnett, your boy.
Ah, my sweet prince.
He was one of those where he was like, he did what he normally did, like ran down the right-hand side, looked like he was going to pass it to Martin, and thought, no, I'm just going to hit it. And he just shot across the keeper into the far corner. 1-0 after 10 minutes. After that, there were 2 kind of flashpoints in the first half. Both of them were like penalties that might have been penalties, but probably you're not really going to see them given. Like Evans with that classic, like he gets to he's on-rushing, the keeper's on-rushing, he gets there first, gets a shot off, but goes miles wide. The keeper absolutely wipes him out. But, he's got a shot off, so the referee's like, no, mate, you kicked it over the bar, so I'm afraid that's not a penalty. And then a one-on-one where he hits it, he gets there first again, and Okonkwo makes the save, but you see the reverse replay, and he's pulled down with a fistful of shirt. So, again, it's one with the benefit. The replay looks like a pen. I think if you're it's one of those, if you're a Mansfield fan, you're frustrated. But realistically, I can see as a neutral why they weren't given, even if I hate that rule where he got a shot off, so therefore it doesn't matter, because it doesn't make any sense, especially if the on-rushing keeper's actually doing something to prevent you hitting the target. And then second half, Wrexham saw it out relatively comfortably. Paul Mullen had an opportunity that he hit wide. there wasn't loads of chances, albeit Mansfield will feel like they've probably created enough to try and get a point out of the game. But two sides who've obviously acclimatised really well to life back in League One, and Wrexham will feel very happy that they're able to get over the line and get a win against a difficult opponent.
Barnsley beat Rotherham 2-0 on Friday night. South Yorkshire derby. Big John Russell. He's big, John Russell. But until Friday night, I always felt like he kind of played as if he was small. Wanted to be a Juan Roman Riquelme rather than a, I don't know.
Finazaz?
No. That's what he wants to be.
Right.
But he should be a big destroyer in the centre of the park. Who's one of those? Paul Ince. Wow. Be Paul Ince, John Russell.
Well, I think Paul Ince famously wanted to be bigger than he was, didn't he?
Tom Ince didn't want to be Paul Ince.
No. Who did Tom Ince want to be?
Tom Ince wants to be Ian Robin.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Where are we? Jonathan Russell. He's big. He plays in midfield. He wears number 3. It hurts my eyes every time I see it.
That's a terrible chart, that one.
It looks horrible, but it's like he just realised that he's quite big and he can use his physicality to be more impactful on the pitch. He's actually clearly got the technical ability. He's clearly got the vision. Coming through at Chelsea, he's been very well coached as an in-possession player. And I like the idea that he can really raise his own ceiling and have a hell of a career from this point if he continues to use his physicality. He out-wrestled Jordan Hugill in order to score for Barnsley, put them ahead. He was involved in a nice move elsewhere in the first half, playing a nice ball out to the left. Ben Killip made a big save for Barnsley at 1-0 to keep the scores level. And then Stephen Humphreys lashed home a left-footed half volley towards the end to make it 2-0 to Barnsley. For Humphreys, I kind of feel like his average goal quality. If you were to give every goal scored a mark out of 10.
That would be a really, really fun data set to have.
Does someone want to help us launch a data set?
Just rate every goal out of 10 and see who averages the highest.
Yeah. Because Lewis Wing would obviously be
Lewis Ping
at the top of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think Stephen Humphreys would be a sneaky...
Who would be the lowest?
Oh, God. Dirk Kuyt.
Paul Dickoff.
Great modern EFL references there. Dirk Kuyt and Paul Dickoff.
Paul Dickoff would have played a fair bit in the EFL.
Scott the Hot Hogan, I reckon.
Let's not talk about him, please. Right.
Anyway, it was a great goal. He hits them so well. And Barnsley are kind of cooking at the moment. 3 wins and a draw has them into 4th spot. Darryl Clark. I think Darryl Clark might be, really good. I think we kind of knew that. But I think maybe we, plural, had kind of forgotten that maybe. And I think he might have been really shrewd appointment. Exactly what Barnsley needed to kind of move into a slightly different phase where they might just have a bit more about them. We'll see. It's easy to say that after 3 wins and a draw has them in 5th. As for Rotherham and Steve Evans, almost the opposite of that. Certainly the opposite to what I expected when Evans was reappointed Rotherham manager. Tony Stewart, their chairman, was very visibly and publicly booing during the game. He was absolutely fuming with his team's performance. He was sitting right in front of the media section. So just every journo that was there was like, I should probably report that the Rotherham owner's sitting in front of me, booing his own team. He's not very happy. And I just think, the stuff that was meant to work well when Evans retook charge of Rotherham just isn't. Being strong at defending their box, creating loads of opportunities with direct play and packing the box with attacking bodies. It's just not really happening. Best stuff recently has been Malik Wilkes' hero ball. And it's not impressive at all. They've lost against the current top 4 0. They beat Huddersfield, but only after a red card had Huddersfield down to 10 men. They're meant to be in that cohort of those teams. And instead they're in the middle of the table. And they're no better than that. The Evans rhetoric hasn't landed as effectively as it has done elsewhere with the fans and seemingly with the players as well. And I genuinely think that the Evans era might be over soon, which I'm very surprised to be saying because I thought it was going to work better than this. But, alas, nevertheless.
What kind of profile do you think they should go for if they do?
Maybe Alex Ravel. Nah, I'm kidding.
No?
Just because,
Just a part exchange option.
What sort of profile? Just sort of Darryl Clark kind of profile? Yeah, just good.
Winning football.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. I think that I'm always a little concerned about the squads that Evans leaves behind because he builds them with such a specific style of football in mind and quite often wants to rely on experience, not much of a developmental coach. So to replace him with someone that was the polar opposite of him, I think would be Exactly. Mid-season would be a head-scratching appointment. So, yeah, if there's someone that fits the profile of Darryl Clark, I can't think of off the top of my head right now, I think he'd be a good person to go into Rotherham if they sack Steve Evans, which they have not done. George, Exeter beat Charlton 1-0.
Set-piece goal. Kramer with a really nicely taken flick at the near post into the far corner. Charlton had a few opportunities in the second half, but as is the way with Charlton, I really respect the job that Nathan Jones is doing there, and it feels like maybe this is just a transitionary season where he needs to kind of make them solid and resolute before they kick on next season. But they're just never really a particularly relentless attacking threat, and it means when they go behind in games, they can often struggle to wrestle their way back into it, and that was the case here. Thierry Small and Matt Godden had decent opportunities late on in the game, but they were unable to convert them. It was a game that was fine margins, low margin, as it often is the case with Charlton. A goal here or there will win it, and it was Exeter who managed to get ahead in there from a set piece and take all 3 points. So credit to Exeter for that. And as I say with Charlton, especially given the attacking quality that they have got within their side. Miles Lieberman, the player that you're very excited, who's back from injury, started up front with Godden, with Alan Campbell in behind. Like, these are players that there's no reason why they should be a fairly blunt attacking threat. But that was the case. But as I say, maybe Exeter, another home win and what's been a really impressive start to the campaign for them.
4
Can
draws.
we still say start to the campaign? 15 games? Yeah, I think this is like it now. Yeah.
Stop now.
Okay. I'll do it for League 2.
4 draws. Crawley 2, Huddersfield 2. Really nice takes from both Hepburn, Murphy and Anderson for Crawley. They only had 3 shots in the game, but 2 of them were goals. Reece Healy and Herbie Kane scored for Huddersfield. 1-1 between Bristol Rovers and Lincoln. Quality goals again. First from Shaq Ford in the first half for Bristol Rovers, and then Lincoln coming on a little stronger in the second half. Jack Moylan. He's someone whose average quality of goal would be quite high. If someone wants to help us make this data set, Jack Moylan. Maybe you could take it on. You'd come out well. That was a 1-1. Classic.
Imagine if Moylan's just a coder.
I call that
like,
a classic EFL 1-1. Just like the away team is slightly stronger than the home team overall, I would say. But the home team have home advantage. Home team go ahead, then have something to
really
defend.
drop off.
Away team come back into it, equalise, 1-1. Thanks very much. We're all right.
Bye-bye.
Stevenage 1, Reading 1.
What was that one?
This one, actually, Reading had like 20 shots to 8.
Yeah, so quite similar.
Quite similar.
Home team go 1-0 up, Reading ramp up the pressure, score late on, everyone goes home 1-0.
Yeah, brilliant. The goals scored by a hard K and a silent K. Kemp and Nibs.
No way. I thought it was Emp and Nibs.
Stevenage's keeper Cooper, the man of the match, saving 8 shots. Confusingly, we now have 2 keeper Coopers in the EFL, and both of them performing pretty well at the moment. And then Birmingham 1, Northampton 1. Tom Brady 1, John Brady 1.
Oh my God, the Brady bunch.
And a fully deserved, if very late, equaliser for a Northampton side who soaked up a lot of pressure, put a bit of a force field around their goal, put a lot of bodies between the ball and the goal to pretty good effect. Stansfield scoring for Birmingham. 25 shots Birmingham had, but only 3 on target. A lot of them blocked at source. And a couple of big chances for Cobblers before Mitch Pinnock's lashed home the equaliser. We had John Guthrie forcing a brilliant save from Allsop. We had Honda Mark managing to beat Allsop, but then having one cleared off the line as well. This was very impressive away result for Northampton Town, and a game where Birmingham fans watched their team have a huge amount of the ball, a huge amount of territory, quite a lot of low quality shots, and didn't win the game. Something a little bit different to start the League 2 segment. If I could ask you, George, producer Helena, just close your eyes. Try and imagine 1,000 pigeons in one large flock, chilling, pecking.
Oh.
Then imagine this very calm, pigeony scene. 12 cats jumping into the middle of the pigeons and sending them scattering. It's a chaotic scene, isn't it? And you've just imagined the League 2 results from Saturday.
That was the WhatsApp I sent you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, nice. Thanks,
Inspired the opening to the League 2 segment.
Great. Thanks very much.
You inspire me, George.
Yeah, no, I just...
Every damn day.
I was just expecting an original idea there. So.
Particularly on Saturdays. George, cat amongst the pigeons in League Two this weekend, Am I right?
Yes.
By that, I mean a load of teams won that wouldn't necessarily have been expected to win. Many of them away teams towards the bottom of the table. One of them, Accrington Stanley, beating Chesterfield, not 1-0, not 2-0, 3-0.
Wow.
3-0. Chesterfield couldn't see the woods for the woods. Josh Woods hit the post from a free kick, tapped in by Ben Woods. Not brothers. The second goal was pure shock and awe. Shock, because it was a 2-goal lead for the away side, or because it was scored by Zach Orr, Accrington's centre-back.
Have you scripted this part of the pod?
Even better, because it was my favourite thing, centre-back, open play, goal. Orr got on the ball, carried it forward a bit, laid it off to midfielder, thought, yeah, we've got a lead to defend, but what if we extend the lead? Gallop forward, finish well, 2-0. The 3-0 goal, finished by Knowles. Massive foul in the build-up, not given. Just an amazing day for Aki. And, a lot of those fans in that away end, they will remember that in 2012, Paul Cook, their former player and manager, left them for Chesterfield. After just 10 months in the job, they'd given him the job off the back of his Sligo Rovers regime, and he left them for Chesterfield. 12 years later, they've beaten him in his own backyard. A couple of big chances for Chesterfield fell at the feet of their right back, Devon Tanton, which was probably not the person that they wanted it to fall to. And some new manager fist pumps dropped. John Doolan, never seen this before, couldn't have loved it more. We've talked about manager fist pumps before. How do you add some originality into an idea that is done across the English pyramid every single weekend? Well, Doolan walked over to the away fans and put together what I can only kind of describe as like a boxing combo to his fans. He went double fist uppercut, then he went right hand overarm like a hook, and then left hand uppercut fist pump, and put it together. It's a beautiful thing. Way. What a day for those Aki fans.
Yeah.
You probably thought the Grimsby Town end was the best away end in League Two over the weekend.
Do you know who did the fist pumps at the end of that game?
Was it A, Dave Artell?
Nope.
B, Danny Rose?
Nope.
C, Kieran Zinedine Green?
Nope. It was John Daddy Svan Thorsten.
Nice.
I don't know why. He was pretty sheepish about it, but he got it done.
Oh, nice.
I think it must be a thing where they take it in turns as to who does it.
You were there?
I was there. I was in the away end. I went to 2 games in 24 hours, which was fun.
All right, Jack Bauer.
Yeah. It's what an episode that will be. Especially me sitting on the platform at Watford Junction Station for 45 minutes with no phone. That was fun.
Oh, God.
This was a game where I went into it with my in-laws who are Grimsby Town fans. I was pretty worried for them. I said in the pub before I thought they'd lose by 2 or 3, which I guess the fans that I went with won't let me forget for a while. And they were like, it was a game pretty devoid of quality. Like, I was impressed with the way that Grimsby Town were able to generally nullify AFC Wimbledon's threat, given that Dons' home form is so good and they generally just completely squash teams at home, as you've seen many times. But similarly, this is Grimsby Town's 5th consecutive away win. They are doing it right on the edge. You know, these wins aren't necessarily the same as Dons' home wins, where they dominate games. Generally, Grimsby are getting ahead in games and having to soak up a lot of pressure and seeing them over the line, but they're doing it. The goal itself was just crazy, really. Like, it was at the end of a passage of play, kind of devoid of quality. We'd seen a few wayward passes. It felt like a game that was fizzling towards 0-0 in the first half. And then Kieran Green, just wide on the left-hand channel, so one-footed, decides to play like a 40-yard outside of the right foot cross cross from deep towards, I would have thought, nobody, but the Dons centre-back duo seemingly didn't see it coming. Danny Rose stole in behind and between the both of them and nodded it home after a bounce to make it 1-0. After that, the Grimsby keeper made a couple of big saves in the second half. Town went close a couple of times as well on the break, but they saw it out relatively comfortably. I think Johnny Jackson will feel frustrated that his Don side, having been behind for the best part of an hour, weren't able to cause Grimsby Town more trouble. This is good for Town. I think that after Dave Artell came in last season from a eminently popular Paul Hurst, and things didn't initially, they improved initially and tailed off a bit towards the back end of last season, there were some worries, but they're now sitting in the playoff places. Artell is very, very popular in terms of the way he talks about the club. There's been a big churn of players, obviously very data-driven, as has been spoken about by the owner, Jason Stockport, in the press, and it's yielding results. So, and it felt, when you're in an away end and you kind of feel the energy of the fan base and feel how much the players and the fans seem to appreciate each other at full time. So, yeah, Grimsby Town feels like a team that are currently on the up. And in Artell, you've got a guy who, when he came in at Crewe, they're in a similar position to where he found Grimsby. And yeah, they got relegated eventually, but he took them into the mid-table of League One with a talented group of young players. And this is a talented group of young players too.
Fish.
Yeah.
Quite mad that they've played 15 league games, lost 7, won 8.
Yeah.
Haven't drawn a single game all season. The only club in all 4 leagues not to do so. I was going to say it's like a bit of a roller coaster for the fans, but one of the things that gets forgotten about using the roller coaster analogy is that quite often times on a roller coaster where you're actually going pretty flat to build suspense for the ups and the downs.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that Grimsby winning or losing every game is a roller coaster. It's more like the seesaw in the kids' playground where, let's say you had your daughter Eva and I had my niece Camilla, and we sat on the seesaw.
Yeah.
It's just up and down.
Up and down. Yeah.
You just got to be really careful not to hit the floor.
But at some point, they're probably just because they're both gonna get off, and then it'll be level and there'll be draws.
There you go. There will be a draw at some point. Equilibrium. Finally. Salford 0, Carlisle 1. Big win for Mike Williamson and Carlisle. Won in the 88th minute by Ben Barclay's big head from a set piece, getting them this win, and a massive shift in the in-possession approach of Carlisle United. It's been a big topic of conversation over the last few weeks as results have been poor and the style has looked awkward. This can be seen in the numbers. I've used Ben Griffiths' amazing data resource, football-match-reports.streamlit.app, to look at the match logs for Carlisle, looking at passes in opposition half and passes into the box. This was their first game since Williamson's first game in charge against Swindon, where they've had less than 100 passes in the opposition half. To put that into context, there's been games recently where they've had 301 passes in the opposition of half, 289, 219, 198, 178, back down to 91 here. They were not building possession. They were not holding the ball in Salford's half at all. They didn't penetrate Salford's box very much. They only had 4 shots in the game, but they showed a bit of grit. They defended their box. Harry Lewis came out. Gabe Breeze went in goal, made a couple of saves, kept a clean sheet. Carlisle win it at the end from a set-piece goal. Massive win for them. And one for Morecambe as well, away at Harrogate.
Big win this, and Harrogate will be wondering how it happened. This was a proper, you spoke about a normal 1-1 draw. I think this was as a kind of a 2-1 away win, smash and grab would go, with Morecambe taking the lead early on through Williams, and then, well, not early on, just before half-time, and then just an onslaught of pressure from Harrogate early in the second half, where the eventual goal scorer, James Daly, missed one of the misses of the season. He rectified that by firing in down the left-hand side with 5 minutes to go. You could see the relief on his face, and from then on, it kind of felt like Harrogate would be the side to continue pushing on. There was a kind of a 5 or 6 minute spell after that where they had loads of block shots. There was a massive goal-mouth scramble after the goal. But then Morecambe, Derek Adams is Morecambe, go up the other end, and McAdam fires them home to win the game 2-1. As I say, for Harrogate, this is a really frustrating result because they are a team that have picked up a few points early in the season. They've got a nice little cushion between them in the relegation zone, hosting a Morecambe side who are rooted to the bottom of the table. Going into the game, they had an 8-point advantage over them. So to put in a pretty good display and to equalise late on but still transpire to lose the game is a huge blow to their desire to stay out of the relegation mix. And I'd say right now, kind of they're being sucked into it pretty quickly. It was a bad weekend for your Harrogates, your Bromleys, your Colchesters, your Swindons, because not only did they drop points, but 23rd and 24th, both picking up wins, is not ideal.
Good for your neutrals, though.
Cats,
also,
pigeons.
Yeah, welcome. Can we mention that Daly, who had missed an absolute sitter for Harrogate, then scored a goal which was a triple Megs.
Was it triple Megs?
2 defenders and the goalkeeper's legs.
Wow.
For 1-1. MK beat Swindon 3-1. Ian Holloway's first league game in charge after a couple of good results in the Cups, and potentially, although I haven't seen it confirmed yet by the club or its historian, I think Harry Smith's goal was maybe their fastest ever, which for a very old, historic and storied club is pretty impressive. 15 seconds was on the clock when Harry Smith leapt and headed Swindon into the lead. Scored too early, or maybe just we're always going to come under a lot of pressure. You decide, because MK got 3 of their own. Kane Thompson-Summers signed in the summer from Halifax. He's been injured, but he's back. He's playing. I know that people at the club are pretty excited about what he might bring to the table. Made it 1-1 for MK. The 2-1 goal is amazing, like probably the comedy goal of the weekend if you watch closely. It's been given to MJ Williams. It's not his goal. It came off the head of big Loz Maguire. So he has a header at the back post, which is somehow saved. It's an amazing save from the keeper. Falls to Williams, who smashes in a half volley, and it hits Maguire on the floor, full in the face, and flies in the goal. And at first, he goes down as if he's in a lot of pain, because he is. Then he realises he needs to make sure it's clear that he's actually scored the goal. I think Opta have given it to MJ Williams, but please, particularly as he had to go through quite a lot of pain in order to get that goal, can we give that to Loz Maguire? 3-1 win in the end for MK. Pretty comfy, all told. Since Scott Lindsay's appointment, only Vale have picked up more points in League 2 than MK Dons. Impressive return. Fleetwood beat Bradford 1-0 from the spot.
Yeah, I think this is the way this game went. It was important for Charlie Adam that they won it, because even though neutrals like me might have been impressed with Fleetwood for the most part of the season, they came into this winless in 5. They had squandered leads in quite a few of those games. You know, you look back to the 2-2 draw against Salford, where they conceded really late on, having battered them for the most part on the Tuesday night. They lost to Port Vale, they lost to Crewe. They went ahead early here, as you say, through a spot kick from Coughlin, who then celebrated in front of the Bradford fans, which I don't think they enjoyed very much. And after that, Bradford were in the ascendancy, but what impressed me the most was the fact that even though Bradford were able to create quite a lot of shots, when you watch the highlights back, that none of them were particularly good chances, and the Fleetwood keeper didn't really have too many saves to make. It was a game where Fleetwood managed playing against a very good side and having a lead for the majority of the game really well, where they sat in deep, they were resolute, they forced Bradford to take shots from awkward areas, or they were limited to kind of set-piece chances. There was only an Andy Cook chance late on that was a kind of significant opportunity for Bradford to reduce the deficit. And I think had that gone in, the criticism from Fleetwood fans around Adam would have been pretty loud. But I personally think that would be unfair in my view. I think he's doing a very good job, and they still, to me, are a side that right now are very much in a forced position, who will rise up the table the more games we play, because I'm still fairly convinced that they're a very good side.
Gillingham win to Nillingham, finally. For the first time since late September, a run which saw them pick up 1 point in 5 games. The monkey is off the back. The cat was among the pigeons here. Vale, who were 10 unbeaten, losing at Priestfield. Gills have now this season beaten Notts when they were top, beaten Boro when they were top, and now beaten Vale as well. Big shout for a penalty in the first half. Curtis going down, the goalkeeper. Did he fell him? I thought probably yes. Referee thought definitely no, and it wasn't given. Stockley had a big chance to put Vale ahead, which he sliced wide. And Jaden Clark came off the bench to win it for Gills, heading a cross from Connor Masterson, the overlapping right-sided centre-back. He kind of headed it onto Deborah and into the corner. So with a heart-in-mouth moment at the end for Gills, who failed to handle a big pump ball forward. A 1-0 win with a dollop of fortune, I think it's fair to say, but a big win nonetheless. And I think it's worth pointing out that Bonner has made proactive changes to try and sort of get things going again. They've gone 3-5-2 in the last 2 games. I think it suits the centre-backs. It means that OG can play left centre-back. He can play in possession quite wide on the left, where he can, I think, offer value and good ball progression. Masterson on the right and Nima in the middle, who's playing well. I think it suits the wing-backs, Hutton and Clark, who are both decent in terms of delivery crosses into the box. They've got 2 up top at the moment, Wiley and Wakeling, who are kind of, running the channels, hard-working, physical types, and then they can bring others off the bench, Andrews in particular, but Jaden Clark came off the bench and played up front. I don't think it really suits Clark, who's a wide player. Nolan as well, who they signed in the summer, who's a wide player. So they'll have to find ways of getting them to impact the game. He did here with Clark coming off the bench to score the winner. I think as an approach, it's likely to lead to quite low-scoring games for Gills, fairly attritional stuff. But I also think there is logic and reasoning behind taking that approach in the next couple of months just to get Gills up and running again, just make them a more solid, a better, more consistent team, and then see if you can build on that in the second half of the season when players like Bradley Dack are back from injury. Big win for Gills. Good weekend. Tranmere 2, Newport 1.
Yeah, a win that was kind of needed for Tranmere, I would say, just because the manner of it. They beat Bromley a couple of weeks ago, which Tranmere fans hoped would be a sign of a bit of a turnaround of form for them, but it wasn't the case, losing their next 2. But this was pretty good. Jennings scored the first, Morris with the second. In the second goal, one of the funniest things I've ever seen was Luke Norris, their number 9, Tranmere's number 9, who is yet to score this season from 600 odd minutes. He missed the first opportunity and felt like he was fouled. And despite his teammate Morris prodding the ball home, making it 2-0, and all the his fellow players celebrating, Morris just continues to complain to the referee that it's not a penalty, which is incredible. Like, what does he want? He wants a pen, but you're 2-0 up, mate.
That's the classic, isn't it? You want your striker to be so desperate to score goals that they're angry if someone else scores and they don't get the pen.
Yeah, exactly. Everydam Hudlin scored late on to make it 2-1, but it wasn't enough for Newport, who put in another worrying performance. They're funny, Newport. Sometimes you feel like they are, they're turning a corner, then they throw in a performance like this. But another poor display for them.
Don't think their fans are finding it funny at the moment, George.
Sorry, mate. Funny, different definitions of funny.
League 2 was 1/3 binary, by which I mean 4 of the 12 games were 1-1 draws. Walsall 1, Crewe 1. A delicious pass from Matas Holicek and a delectable finish from Omar Bogle, putting Crewe ahead at the Bescot. But I'm still trying to work out Nathan Lowe's remarkable strike. It was kind of like on the stretch, managed to get incredible power in off the bar. Some player, Nathan Lowe, by the way, on loan from Stoke, 19-year-old striker. He has scored 5 of his 10 starts for Walsall, 7 goals rather already this season. Looks an absolute menace. Donny 1, Notts 1. Again, 2 cracking goals. Both of them thumping headers from big number 9s, Jata and Ironside, but with really lovely build-up as well, as you'd expect from these two teams who play good stuff. Barrow 1, Colchester 1. Barrow throwing it away late, having gone ahead through Newby. It was Lyle Taylor tapping in after brilliant and unselfish work from Samson to Vide, who's been missed in the last couple of weeks. Has been playing absolutely excellently in his last few appearances in a way that really excites me. At the same time, weak defending from Theo Vassell. Second time this season that it's happened. It happened against Carlisle as well, where he just falls over trying to win a free kick, I think, under a tiny bit of contact at best, and the referee doesn't buy it. And they concede, and that was the case here with Barrow throwing away what should have been 3 points, a valuable point for Cole U. Same story with Bromley, really. If you're Cheltenham and your opposition have a man sent off after 20 minutes, and then you go 1-0 up, you can't be failing to win that game. Did you know there's a former England international playing in League 2? He got sent off after 20 minutes.
Yeah, who is it?
Carl Jenkinson.
Yeah, of course.
Ethan Archer putting Cheltenham 1 up with his 3rd in 3 games. And you got to hold on, but they didn't. Big Omar Shomi heading home for Bromley. Great character shown. Cheltenham hitting the post in injury time through Matty Taylor, almost grabbing the win. And that was a pretty fun weekend in the EFL. It's going to be a busy feed over the next 2 weeks with the England pod as well. Pods will follow the games against Greece and Ireland over the next 10 days or so. And of course, we'll be back again on Monday with a recap of the EFL weekend, betting shows this Thursday and next week too. So thank you for listening to Not the Top 20. We always appreciate your support by lending us your ears or your eyes if you watch on YouTube, but equally lending support on social and sharing the pod with those who you think would be into it. Thanks very much. Go well.